Fellow alcoholics of Reddit, what was your OST? I really do have a drinking problem moment. When I realized I had half a dozen liquor stores that I would cycle through so they not realize I had a problem. They knew. My 3 brothers breaking my apartment door down an hour and a half before my dad's funeral. They dragged me out of bed, threw me into a cold shower and dressed me before driving me to the cemetery. I have almost no recollection of the funeral service and they dumped me home straight after the funeral. I'd been on a bender for 3 days before the funeral and carried on for 4 days after. I got up after the 7th day and just looked at the state of my apartment. Wine bottles everywhere. 58 bottles in total, which I'm still sickened by. Cigarette burns all over the carpet. I'd puked in the kitchen sink. I'd crapped my pants and just left them on the floor in the middle of the room. I was freaking disgusting. I was that scared of the sight of myself in the mirror that I decided I had to stop there and then. I had one blip 3 years later, but I'm currently 7 years sober. 2 of my 3 brothers still don't talk to me for the way I behave while both of our parents were dying. Mum and dad died 5 months apart, and I was a wreck for well over a year in total. I understand why, and I feel like crap every day about it. I only have myself to blame, but frick, I miss my brothers. I'm sorry for your loss. Know that 7 years is really amazing, though. You can do it, mate. We're rooting for you. When I looked back and realized that except for a few days I spent in the hospital for something unrelated, I hadn't had a single sober day in over 5 years. Amazing really. 2,000 plus continuous days of drinking, minus 3 somewhere in the middle. Pretty sure I was the poster boy for high functioning alcoholism. I was watching The World's End with Simon Pegg and Nick Frost and all the friends gathered together to have a pint of beer at each of, I think it was 12 pubs. I didn't think anything of this until Nick Frost's character, who quit drinking, is having a pint of water at each pub. I thought to myself, holy crap, that's a lot of water, after thinking the beer was no problem. It actually would be a lot harder. Beer is gonna make you pee out the liquid a lot faster than the water, so more room for more liquid. I was madly in love with a woman, and planning to propose to her soon. On the way home from drinking one night, I got pulled over and arrested for DUI with her in the car. She was shocked to discover it was my 3rd arrest. Over the next few months, I tried to stop drinking but only wound up drinking more. I had gained about 50 pounds in a year from being a drunk couch potato. With the DUI and job stress, my girlfriend was the only thing in my life that I was happy about. Then, she coerced me into an open relationship so that she could date an ex-lover of hers on the side. I didn't want this, but I was terrified at the thought of losing her and thought I could benefit from the arrangement as well. The pain caused me to drink even more. I was constantly depressed, hungover, and generally miserable. The relationship quickly fell apart and ended in a huge blow-up argument when I got sick of her disrespect and lies. The heartbreak was so intense that I knew if I kept drinking, I would commit suicide very soon. The very next day I went to 2 AA meetings and got a sponsor. That was 130 days ago and I've been to a meeting nearly every day since then, without a sip of alcohol. I've been exercising like crazy, and I'm now down over 60 pounds. It was a crappy experience but I'm turning my life around rapidly because of it. Was standing in Target. It was nice and cool, low 60s outside and I was pouring sweat. I looked like Wilt Chamberlain in the 4th quarter. People were looking at me like I was a leper. I stopped drinking the next morning. Getting fired my first day at a new job because I was still drunk from the night before. It was the smell of booze that gave me away rather than any behaviors. I ruined a blossoming relationship with a girl I was flirting with at work because it was obvious I was still drunk from the night before. Acted a bit too groggy, a bit too confident with dumb things I was saying. I don't even know if I smelled. My taste and smell senses are awful. I didn't even realize I was still drunk until I sobered up an hour or 2 later. When it dawned on me that I was the common denominator in all of the chaotic situations in my life. Up until that point, I'd blamed everybody else for all of my problems. Nothing was my fault. My moment of clarity came when I was in the hospital with tonsillitis or sinus infection or something. Got sick frequently because immune system was shot. I was lying there and inadvertently began to detox. I started to feel sorry for myself when thinking about all the terrible and chaotic aspects of my life. For example, ruined personal relationships, insecure living situation, inability to hold a job, and of course the inability to stop drinking and using for even a couple hours. My drinking and I were the common thread throughout these situations. It was a revelation. So I went to rehab and got sober. I took responsibility for my life. Coming up on 9 years sober and life is great. Went out to party for an evening and woke up 24 hours later in a different country, in a hotel room with no clothes. I blacked out all the time but then realized that time that there was a real problem. This spanned about 9 years, so here goes my really short list. First DUI was running from police, helicopter involved, roadblocks and TV cameras, showing up to work drunk, having to drink to go to work, 7 rehabs, 12 detoxes, multiple hit and runs, horrifying C, developing into rock as finances decreased, addiction, shacking up in a trap house for a year while maintaining an 80k a year job, losing things, vehicles, pants, literally people, seizures, hallucinations, pee blood, throwing up blood, crapping blood, throwing up vodka while I drank vodka, rinse and repeat, attempting to steal a car from an auto show, in a convention hall with no obvious exits, multiple fights, lots of scars and blood, given last rites, maybe it was symbolic, benzos, so many benzos, DTs that resulted in seizures, family that wrote me off completely. I have almost 2 years of sobriety today. I remember these things and write them down because I can't afford to forget where I will end up if I take one more drink. If you really are an alcoholic addict and have had that moment, please try and see that just because you feel like you hit bottom, it can get worse. These are all things that are yet to happen for you. Give yourself a chance to change and become happy. My life is amazing today once I gave up my old way of thinking and my attempt to hold on to old ideas. My wife of 13 years left me. I still drank for another week, actually, but it escalated since I was free. A hangover where I wanted to die, not the first time, and the fact that I tried to push her when I was drunk the night before was my wake-up call. I have never felt more awful as a human being and I still feel that way today. I'm almost 6 months sober. Anyone reading this, please get help when you need it. I ignored the obvious signs for years, lost my marriage, and most of my self-respect. This could have all been avoided. Please, take a moment and ask yourself if you have a problem. God, I'm reading this drunk and feel like crap. I would vomit from gulping straight whiskey like water. I would catch the vomit and drink it again because I was not going to waste that booze. Spit up on an IHOP floor in front of the waitress and a packed restaurant at 2 AM. Drove off because people were trying to help me. Told my girlfriend to pee off. Wake up to my car parked in the middle of my apartment complex, inches away from a brick wall. Went sober for a year and took up golf. That was about 9 years ago. And took up golf. You were supposed to get better. Looking around my room and in my closet of shame at all the empty bottles I hid in a week so no one else in the house knew how much I was drinking. I remember watching a Law and Order SVU episode where Olivia is at an alcoholic's house finding all the hidden bottles. I saw that as a teenager before a drinking problem and was astounded. 5 years later and that was what I was doing. Not recovered yet, but it was one of the things that made me realize I had a massive problem. Went night swimming in the ocean blackout drunk. I only remember getting out of the water and looking for my room key after the sun came up. When I had blacked out for the 3rd time in less than 4 months. I am a binge alcoholic that has no concept of cutting myself off. The love of my life was really disappointed in me and I didn't want to lose him. I also didn't want to be like my biological father. Brother, if blacking out less than once a month makes you an alcoholic, everyone in college would be one. Drinking at work, getting away with it for months. Finally collapsed with a .46 and had to be taken out of the lab in front of everyone in an ambulance. Vomiting blood for months. Seizures. Heart stopped. Coma. 3 rehabs. Lost relationship and apartment and job. Jail. All from 4 years of drinking. Started at 19. Most of this stuff happened at 22. Finally quit at 23 for the longest period I've been sober. 24 now. Yikes. When I was dicking around in AA, which should have been a clue, still drinking, still thinking I could control it, my sponsor suggested I read the portion of the big book which says if you think you can control your drinking, try it. So I tried it, with plans to drink half of a 40. I came out of a blackout 2 days later, after blowing my entire bank account on drugs and alcohol. That was the moment. I spent £12,000 in 4 months on nothing but C and alcohol after I got back from Afghanistan. I was 19 and at the time made the excuse that I was making up for lost time. I realized I had a problem after I met my girlfriend and suddenly didn't have this urge to drink. This might sound cliche and cheesy, but suddenly my mind was quiet and I didn't hate myself. She literally saved my life because I was close to just ending it. I was constantly fighting and going out for days on end. My hands will never be the same, and in one hit she somehow managed to unfuck me. I still drink, but it's purely social now. I can have 1 pint or 14 and not go off the rails. 2 or 3 times a year I'll have a big butt blowout, but besides that I only drink a few times a month. It's absolutely possible to have a drinking problem without being drunk all the time. When I realized I couldn't watch any film TV show where the characters are drinking, because then I'd just obsess over the fact that I wanted to go buy alcohol and then could only focus on the characters drinking and how badly I wanted it, and thus couldn't enjoy the film TV show unless I had alcohol on hand. Also, when I stooped so low to drinking mouthwash or vanilla extract to see if I'd catch a buzz. Horrible time. Promised my girlfriend we'd go to dinner for our 1-year anniversary of our first date. I showed up 3 hours late, drunk off my butt again because I went out drinking with my friends instead. She started yelling at me, so I threw a lit cigarette in her face. It burned a pretty good area of that tender skin right under her eye and on the bridge of her nose too. She broke it off with me a short time after that. That was in 1990 and I haven't been drunk since that night. To this day I still feel like crap knowing I could have potentially blinded her if it had hit her a centimeter higher. Whoa, that must be hard to live with. If you think you have a problem with alcohol, you probably do. The only thing that worked for me was calling AA. If you want help today, call AA and go to a meeting today. Alcoholism will either kill you, jail you, or lead you to a mental hospital. This crap is nothing to play with. Best of luck everyone. Lots of ways to get help, but if you go to AA they will try to help you, providing you wanted to get sober and are willing to do anything to get sober. When I found myself in the hospital for the second time my liver was failing. I had had a seizure and my fiance called 911. I was barely able to give the consent for her to be family. I spent 7 days in the hospital, going through the DTs, luckily on meds, hallucinations, cold sweats, you name it. After 3 days I was sobered up and got the bad news I may have destroyed my liver. Through lots of meds they were able to protect my liver just enough that I have recovered full liver function. It was scary. That's when I knew I had a problem. Before then I just thought I was a heavy drinker as I held down a job, kept the bills paid, etc. I got my master's degree in CIS while sitting in bars and polishing off half a handle of cheap scotch a day. I was the definition of a functional alcoholic. It's really easy to push away the description alcoholic when you appear to have it all together. I can't be an alcoholic. Look, all is good. Fee and K, nice apartment, car, no DUIs. Yeah, I drink a lot, maybe a bender now and then. But who doesn't hit it hard every now and again? But 9 years of this will kill you. My answer last time this was asked, when I realized my morning routine was 1. Waking up at 4 AM regardless of what time I passed out. 1. Chugging a 32-ounce bottle of water next to my nightstand to dilute the bile I was going to throw up in 5 minutes. 1. Stripping naked to see what bruises I got the night before so I could explain them away. 1. Checking my wife's Facebook page so I could fake remembering what we did the night before. 1. Wondering if I had enough money booze stashed away to continue living this hack I called my life. Somewhere along the line I became okay with this being my morning, every single morning, for a very long time. As others have said, if this sounds familiar, there is help and there is hope. It's been 824 days since my last drink. Not an alcoholic but in recovery for Xanax and coke. Realized I had a problem when I woke up in jail not knowing what I did. The second time I drunkenly crashed. I mean it was just paint scratches on the bumper, but still, my at the time girlfriend's car after a Christmas party. She left me after the holidays. I realized I had a problem as I had spent the entire previous semester drinking away every night with 12-16 drinks. Stupid crap. Got fat, ugly and more depressed. I realized when started I couldn't stop, that I used it as answer to problems. I got myself in lots of alcohol-induced WTF situations in the past few years that could qualify, but the moment when I really understood it couldn't go on like this was when I realized I had simply lost my survival instinct. No matter how depressed I got and how often I thought about suicide, there was always this something that forced me to keep going, and now it wasn't there anymore. I really, truly didn't care. 103 days sober and going strong. Best decision of my life. There was no moment. Now it is trying to differentiate between scenarios caused by my alcoholism and scenarios that my alcoholism causes, and whether it matters. Bought some Jack instead of eating that day cause it's all I could afford. Totally worth it, but I have a problem lol. And that time I tried to not drink for a week and I had one of those this is stupid. I can do whatever I want and caved after 2 days. Shoulder went with Evan Williams and used the difference for a cheeseburger. I realized that I would be dead in 6 months if I kept drinking, and in another week or 2 I probably wouldn't care. You can see how soon I'm going to die in any picture of me taken then. That was over 8 years ago. I remember when I went to bed once and found that the room wasn't spinning and that I hadn't passed out in under a minute. I promptly went downstairs and finished the bottle and then returned to bed. Also when I woke up in the morning and downed the half-finished drink on my bedside table, it was Ricard that was mixed with ice and water the previous evening. By the morning it had all separated and kinda looked like blood plasma in a test tube. My rock bottom was relatively mild. Came about 35 years ago. I woke up in my crappy $175 month apartment. I was hungover as frick. I was lying in the middle of my living room floor. I realized that I was sore all over. I had scrapes and bruises all over. Big scrape on my hip, both knees, one shoulder. My favorite shirt was destroyed. Holes in it, and blood on it. My face was swollen and a couple of teeth on the left side felt loose. I had vague memories of getting into a fight, and of falling down a set of weathered concrete steps. I had no money in the bank, no money in my pockets, and no food in the house. None. And it was 3 days till payday. I went hungry for 3 days. I recommend everyone try it to see how freaking hard it makes life, and decided I was done with that crap. Relatively mild. Relative indeed. My rock bottom was my very first hangover that lasted the whole day after 3 bottles of beers. Drinking water only now. I am glad you are still here and surviving those days. Waking up on someone's lawn in a place I have never been. No idea how I got there. In freezing weather. In a city. Super lucky. Not me but my dad. He says the moment he decided to stop drinking and get better was when I was 4 years old and I said I was embarrassed by him. He says it was the most shame he had ever felt and he's been sober for almost 20 years now. I'm proud of him for realizing he had a problem and for having the strength to fix it for his daughter. When I was drinking shots after work, the bartender served me until I literally fell off my brass stool because I was such an alcoholic. You couldn't really tell I was drunk. I switched to H after that. I have been off everything since the 27th of February 1998. The last several years of active alcoholism were spent knowing dang well that I had a problem, but I'm not sure that there was an exact moment when it became clear. It just became more and more obvious until it seemed like I had always known. Here are a series of realizations that contributed to my understanding of my condition. 1. I get worse hangovers than most people. This is not my subjective experience. It appears that my body is metabolizing alcohol differently than most bodies do. 2. Once I start drinking I cannot stop. If I consume one drink I will continue to consume alcohol until I have run out of drinks, money, or am physically unable to continue. This is not a choice on my part, and this process can be interrupted only by an act of willpower on my part so strong that it is unlikely to occur and impractical to rely on. Interestingly, I do not suffer the cravings for alcohol which others describe. My alcoholism is only manifest when I am already drinking alcohol. When I am sober, there is no force compelling me to drink. 3. Alcohol makes me bad at everything I am good at. When I am drunk, my jokes aren't funny, my stories aren't interesting, and I wouldn't want to be around me. I have met folks whose personalities improve when they have had a couple. That isn't me, and it never will be. 4. If I allow myself to be a person that drinks any amount of alcohol, then I will get in trouble with the police once every 2 years, minimum. If I don't drink alcohol, then I won't. I could go on, but that's a lot already. Alcoholism was the lowest point in my life and it wasn't fun. If the justification for drinking so much was to have a good time, then that was not accomplished. I can count all of the unambiguously pleasant occasions that I have been drunk for on 2 hands, and I was drunk more or less every night of my life for 4 years. I haven't had a drop for 8 years, and now every day is better than the best day when I was drinking. The best description I've read so far. Congrats on your sobriety. When I sat in the nosebleeds at a concert after drinking like a fish. The show starts, everyone stand up cheering. I lose my balance and end up on top of a woman several rows down from me. Needless to say, after drinking from 13 to 29, it was time for change. Sober since January 2015. There were many warnings and signs of my alcoholism. But what got me to finally acknowledge and accept my problem was when I spent the night screaming at the people closest to me, friends and lovers. Threats of violence and death. Burning myself in front of them. I have self-harm tendencies. Running up and down the street yelling. Repeatedly laying on the horn in the middle of the night cause they had confiscated my keys and I was ready to go home. And ultimately passing out in the passenger seat of my car. I haven't drank a drop since that night. I'm in therapy and going to weekly meetings. I'm committed to doing everything in my power to never be that person again. 48 days down, a lifetime to go. Had a problem once. For reference, I put my alcohol bottles out for recycling once a week. I realized I had a problem when I was looking at the recycling to go out while drinking the 7th bottle of vodka. I was worried that my garbage man would figure it out, so I started driving my empties to different garbage cans in my town, so stealthily spreading them around. Definitely a sign that you have a big problem when you're concerned about what the garbage man, a total stranger who likely couldn't care less, will think. I was about 17 or 18 and was going to the shop at 8 AM shivering and shaking. When I had that first can, I was feeling better again. It wasn't really oh crap because I'd kind of accepted it was going to happen. Clean and sober nearly 10 years now, but I still think back to those mornings trying to find enough change to get one drink to stop me being sick and could then work out how to get enough money to get drink for the day. Being an alcoholic was freaking tiring. Realizing that I craved alcohol like I did cigarettes. There's never been a rock bottom moment. Actually, maybe that's not true. Definitely waking up places I didn't expect to with people I hadn't intended on. So I guess it was a cumulative thing. I didn't have any one big oh crap moment. Lots of little things, but I would convince myself that I would straighten up when I wanted to, or when external circumstances got better. Eventually I really wanted to, and external circumstances did get better, but I could not stop on my own. After trying and failing repeatedly, I got scared enough to get help. Best thing I ever did. 17 years sober. Life really is so much better. I was 20. I had been kicked out of every place I lived from 17 till then. I was homeless again and I lived in a Ford Ranger behind a movie theater near the highway. I still had a few friends. I was invited to go hang out with some folks. I got thrashed before I ever got there. When I got there I threw up all over the people's living room. I passed out in a bathtub. The middle of the night I broke into one of their roommates' rooms and emptied it of all the liquor he had stashed in a mini fridge. I left and couldn't find my truck. I wandered around 2 different apartment complexes for God knows how long. I woke up the next morning in somebody's car. I'd thrown up all over it. I didn't find my truck till the day after that. That's the last time I remember. It was still about 3 months before I got sober. The last 3 months was hiding in my truck in the woods behind the movie theater. I stole a lot. I'd steal from gas stations and grocery stores and other homeless people. Pretty sure there was a guy owning in the same woods and stole his liquor while he was passed out. I was a week away from my 21st birthday when I went to AA. I went through DTs on a dude's floor and stayed in my truck on the weekends. After about a month of doing that, I got into an Oxford house. Been sober since August 2001. I drove drunk. That was the straw for me. I drove about 10 blocks from my house to the liquor store in a snowstorm to buy more vodka. I slid into the intersection and there was a cop. He didn't stop me by the grace of whatever, but it was a wake-up call. I was also on the verge of losing my husband. I was drinking a lot and unsuccessfully hiding it. I had bottles of booze hidden everywhere around the house. Add to that the fact that I was also taking OTC sleeping pills and waking up gasping for breath, major depressed respiratory system, and I knew I was going bad places. I took a month off work and checked into a rehab program. I've had a couple of slips since then, but have been sober for 2 years now and won't slip again. When a teetotaler ratted me out for sneaking booze into the movie theater and I got ushered out in disgrace. Hey, IPAs are the perfect complement for salty, buttered popcorn. What is a boy to do? Basically, I had a good paying job, a wonderful girlfriend and a loving family, but one night on the way over to my girlfriend's house, I ended up being surrounded by 5 cops and getting crap kicked out of me and tasered. There is a long story leading up to that, but that's the moment. I don't remember much about that. The police report said I kicked the first officer in the dong. That's when he called for backup. I came to about 30 seconds before the second taser. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.